Hi everyone, and welcome to my experience of part 3 of the Milan Art Mastery Program. Part 3 is portfolio, and as you can see, there are lots of paintings, 16 to be exact, 2 per week, and the so-called production week, which is 10 paintings in 1 week, which are the smaller ones. So let me just tell you about the experience, about the things I learned, as we usually do with the tips. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for commenting, being so encouraging. Actually, this YouTube channel really helped me just keep going. If you remember the last video, how I ended, I was totally unsure about whether I was ready for portfolio, about whether I really have found a style, whether I was going to be able to do anything cohesive, which is what Milan Art teaches, that your portfolio should be cohesive. I think it looks pretty cohesive. I think there is something coming through, and thank you for giving me the courage. Thank you for inspiring me. So go find your people or places where like-minded people are. You want to be inspired by somebody doing what you want to do. This does not in art have to be the same style, but just somebody who's going that path. As you will see, it does take courage to do this, but oh my God, it's so rewarding. So, cohesiveness, I mentioned. I remember that was a big thing, you know, I was just not sure if anything cohesive was going to come out of me. And here, I'm not going to recommend this book again because I already did last time. Steal Like an Artist. He rocked my boat when he said, don't worry about cohesiveness, because whatever comes out of you will cause that there is somehow some kind of a cohesiveness. That freed me. Just reading that really freed me to say, yes, that's right. So I'm just gonna have to let stuff come out. And so determine or detect anything that puts boundaries, limits, inhibitions on you, and get rid of it. Anything that like speaks in your head that you believe is the truth. Make sure, is it the truth or is it not? Oh, they said I have to do this. Oh, they said, oh, if I do that, somebody's going to think this. Try to get rid of all that. The reason I think it's dangerous to worry so much about cohesiveness is that it's going to be making you worried. Like, now I'm going to have to stick with that style. No, don't. Stick with a style or a theme as long as you feel drawn to it. That's why for me, found it's not going to be working to make 20 sources. For me, it was much more important to just get started somewhere. That doesn't mean I didn't start with ideas. Now, if you remember, this was one of my breakthrough paintings in part 2. And yes, you can see definitely I went from there. But I thought I was going to do a whole series of these people in boxes. So this is the first one I made. It looked good in the sketch, and I thought that could be fun. And it's one of my least favorites of my portfolio so far. So I'm very glad I didn't do 20 sources, like really working this out, because in the source, as a source, I couldn't tell that as a painting, it's just somehow not going to do it. So making 20 sources would have been kind of insane and a huge waste of time, because for me right now, one painting really develops out of the next, out of the next, out of the next. Also, having to paint what I have planned that I'm going to paint is a killer of joy. Now, our teacher, Milan, is all about needing to have those sources and knowing what to paint next, because that will keep her momentum. And she's somebody who is, I don't want to use the word worried or scared of painting without a source. For me, it's quite the opposite. If you give me a source and you're like, this is what you're going to paint for the next 4 hours, I'll be like, oh, okay. So I repeat myself, but making 20 sources would have not worked for me. Maybe make 10, maybe make as many as you want. Because you're gonna make 2 paintings per week. You don't have to have 20. I think you don't. Because then that means that lasts for 2.5 months. And oh my God, look at the development that I've gone through within just 1 month. There is no way for me to know what I'm gonna wanna paint in 3 months. Absolutely not. What do I want to paint? What am I going to paint? And it's not a question at all anymore. Now stuff is just like falling out of me, and it's hard to keep up with my ideas. And I also don't worry about having to put all my ideas down and making sources out of them, because yesterday's ideas are old news today. Like, it's not, what I'm going to want to paint today is a completely new idea, possibly. And I'm gonna have to go follow that, because otherwise it's gonna drag me down. So, but I have found ways of making sources. What I have found does make my paintings better. Next tip, go deeper into the whole subject matter of painting. For me, composition has always been a big thing, and I've bought some books. The Landscape Painter's Workbook, even though I am not a landscape painter. And I'm gonna read a wonderful quote. Because you've heard me talk about my problems with realism, and this speaks from my heart. Our goal is not to reproduce what we see exactly as we see it. Rather, all we observe, every color, shape, and detail is filtered through an interpretive lens. The painting we produce may resemble a landscape, but is now a painting, a unique interpretation of the world in its own visual language. And that's what I always keep saying. I want to see the unique you in your painting. I don't want to see you paint what I can see. That would be boring. I have another great book on composition, mastering composition. This is Ian Roberts, and he also has a book out there that's called Creative Authenticity. A big vending platform has a large reading example from that book on their website. And already that free sample from that book is worth reading it. Go read it. And then the other book is Mastering Composition. And they talk so much about, like the rule of thirds. That's like nothing. That's like that beginner. There is so much more to composition, leading lines, all that good stuff, value masses. And the most important thing that blew my mind here was, he calls the main lines in your painting the structural lines. Guess what your 4 main structural lines are? The outside, the frame of your painting, the shape of your painting, which also for me was kind of an explanation why sketchbooks are a problem for me. So I have always done what you maybe see here. I have always done that anyway, that I first outline the actual shape. So I'm just going to give you that as a snippet of that book. There is so much more, value masses, color, paint, all these great things. The thing is, I can recommend this book very highly, but you might want to find your own books, Just because you've been through the technical part of this program doesn't mean that you're done. In fact, I think it's a very good sign if you now start yearning for more. Congratulations. Have I said that I hate sketchbooks? So what I can recommend, whether you're using a sketchbook or not, is thumbnails. It really helps to see whether a painting is going to have an effect or not. So start making thumbnails. It's harder than you think. In the thumbnail, you don't need color. You need the main shapes and the main value masses, meaning darkest, medium, and light. If that's all you make as a source, then you're off to a very, very good start, actually. So now, speaking of the main structural lines, as you can already see, I have some weird canvas shapes, and that's actually a recommendation. I came about these through luck, and they're very unusual sizes. And actually these really long ones, I thought first I'm not going to be able to use them. I didn't even intend to paint on them, but I'm like, what would I paint if I did? And then I enjoyed it so much that those were some of the first ones that I painted. So I also used some of what I learned in that landscape book. And it really just gave me so much direction for just a general composition. Now these canvases are not as thick as Milan Art would want them. I decided to use them anyway. I actually have a trick that I will share in a much later video on how you can still elevate these canvases to look better. So I just wanted to get them anyway. I didn't think I was going to make portfolio pieces, but here I was making portfolio pieces. And the other cool canvases that I came about from the same person, they're the opposite. They're like really thick. And I'm now working on 3 new works where I'm really including that side, that whole side. So consider unusual canvases because it might really take you new exciting places where you wouldn't go normally. This is probably the cheesiest painting I've painted. I think a lot of people will like it. I'm not crazy about it, but I don't hate it. But when I was painting that the landscape here in the back, I realized I'm not enjoying doing that. I was struggling with it. I was not having fun, and I was like, heck, maybe I'm not a landscape painter. And so that brought me to my next paintings. Again, I'm glad I didn't make 20 sources with landscape in them. That would have been a waste. I found out a lot that I don't want with this one. I found a lot of what I do want with this one. I don't think they're cohesive, but it doesn't matter. And so the next one makes total sense. I'm calling this pretty much together. I kind of like it. There was just one more thing I wanted to say. You figure out how you use a sketchbook, if you even use a sketchbook, because I hate sketchbooks. Actually, I never even used a sketchbook, to be honest. I used loose pages, and I might go back to that because loose pages, I can just put them in the bin. I'm now using this because it's basically just for thumbnails and pencil sketches, not much color in there. And it has a lot of pages so that I don't feel precious about it. I produce more unusable stuff than usable sketches in a sketchbook. So that's okay. I want to give you the permission to have an ugly sketchbook, to have no sketchbook at all, to have a very big one, to have a very small one, to just do thumbnails. You do you, again. But the sketchbook thing, sketchbook challenges, what's the point? It's like, are you making art or are you making a sketchbook? What's the end goal? Is your end goal the sketchbook or is your end goal the art? What I want to say to this, it's fairly large. There's a lot of footage to be done. And I just want to say, let paintings finish themselves overnight. Sometimes you have something specific in mind for an area and you're kind of hung up. Maybe you're not able to produce what you have in your head on the canvas. And when you're leaving the studio, you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to come back to that the next day. And then the next day you come back and you're like, this looks good. I can leave it that way. So let paintings finish themselves. Basically means step away often enough, because when you're too close and in the midst of things, you can't always see the good things that have happened all by themselves, and you might go paint over them, which is a bummer because maybe it was better before. Having said that, if you like stuff that's on your painting, don't get too precious about it. Courage makes better paintings. Develop courage. Cultivate courage. Sometimes it really is like, should I or should I not? What if I add that red and it's going to be horrible? Should I? I'm not going to add it. But maybe that red would have been it. And if you have a calling to try something, just try it. You can paint something else again. I mean, it is agonizing sometimes, and I feel that I need a lot of courage when I paint. And most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, most of the time courage gets rewarded. Oh, there's one more thing. It's a painting technique thing that you might want to watch yourself. Sometimes I don't look at my brush. Like I will mix the paint and load it up and go on the canvas and not get what I wanted because I had a big blob of paint on my brush that I didn't look at. I think that's the cause of a lot of artists not getting what they wanted to get with a brush stroke. The moment, I take it up, my eyes are on the canvas, and it's very good to have the eyes on your brush first, whether you got the paint placed where you want it. Sounds so obvious, and I'm aware of that, but I still sometimes forget to do it. So during my vacation, I also used that time to prepare myself for a so-called production week, where you produce 10 paintings in 1 week. I wanted to just try some stuff out because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. It's something you want to plan a little bit. And I did some inking experiments, wanting to combine it with drawing. I thought I could whip out stuff like that fairly quickly. This is one that's just the ink. I haven't drawn on it yet. Like this one very much. I got too precious on, for example, this one. I got worried to mess it up. So that really stalled me. Also, the materials I used here, the charcoal, didn't do what I wanted. The fine liner on this paper didn't seem the right choice. On one hand, I want to tell you, keep experimenting with materials with your process. If you have like this, I have to have everything set and always do the same so that I get a cohesiveness. Oh boy, that doesn't let you grow as an artist. Maybe at the end of part 2, you found elements of your process that is going to maybe stay with you for the rest of your life. But there has to be ample room for development. There has to be room for change. So give yourself playtime away from the rigid schedule. I mean, I'm not into rigid schedules much because I find that it creates burnout. But that's me, and you might need the rigid schedule to keep you going. Having said that, playtime super important, and I like this very much, and I still think I might, go deeper on this somehow, sometime. But for production week, I don't recommend you using a completely different technique than what you have done until now. You might just not be familiar enough. Like in my case, with the what drawing materials am I using? Am I suddenly going to use pastels, which I love, but I haven't been using pastels. So I'm lacking the technical abilities right now. I haven't practiced that. And so for production week, where you produce 10 paintings in a week, you might not want to do something completely new. But before we get to production week, another book I'm reading, and it's not a small one, 9th Street Women. This is about female artists. Very inspiring. They were so courageous doing what they did. They really were pioneers. People did not understand what they were doing. This is me going back to the whole subject matter of, is my art going to be sellable? I think I'm getting to a point where I feel that it might be sellable, but I'm especially at the point where that's not my first question right now. So there's other stuff that's much more important right now. To be me, find me. So 2 more paintings. Yeah, it's an unusual canvas size again, and it's the wide canvases, which I love. It just kind of came from this. So my paintings and drawings are usually the idea source for my next painting. Not my favorite painting as a total. I think I liked the top 2/3 of it. Another thing that I want to recommend is solving problems in half sleep. Seriously, that time when you wake up in the morning and you're still kind of, in that very relaxed land where everything is possible. I usually think about what I'm painting And I find unusual, surprising solutions that I don't think in my day brain mode would have come up with. So you might want to experiment with that. Problem solving and half sleep. I want to say the videos in part 3 are amazing. Amazing. Watch them. Do not forget to watch those videos. They're so good. They're on such great subjects. I'm amazed by this whole course. I would have never, ever believed 8 months ago that I'd be standing here with not only that amount of paintings around me made by me, but by having really found me finally for my painting, for my art, and having so much joy, and actually believing that I am a professional artist. Of course, now the money side has to come, but it's starting to. I get people asking to buy my paintings and to paint commissions for them. It's all happening. I saw it happening to other people, but I thought it won't happen to me like that. I was like, yeah. Those are the A kids. So watch the videos if you're in the program. In part 3, it's kind of easy to forget because you have learned all the technical stuff. And part 3, it's the videos are about emotional intelligence and about what to do if you hit roadblocks and all of those things, you know. Now they often say you want to put in 40 hours a week into your painting. I'm not putting in 40 hours into painting. Now it is a full-time job, absolutely. I think I'm painting maybe 20 hours, something like that. But do not forget, that's not yet all about being an artist. Unfortunately, there's this other stuff. I mean, making sources, organizing material, communicating with people, social media. There is so much more that is also part, like updating your website, blah, 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 Instagram. All of that is part of being an artist. Takes up anywhere, I think, from 1/3 to 2/3 of your time. I wish it wasn't that way. But don't feel pressured if they say you should be painting 40 hours every week. I don't need that. But what I do is the painting is the first thing I do. I wake up, have my breakfast, and I come to the studio and I paint. 4 hours later, I'm usually exhausted, but fulfilled. And I go about doing my other stuff that I don't like doing as much quite easily because I've already painted, I feel satisfied, I feel fulfilled, and I don't mind doing that other stuff. If I do it the other way around, my whole life I've done this wrong. I would do the stuff that was burdening me and I let it drag me down so much, and I would do that first because I felt like I need to get that out of the way before I get to do what's fun. It's actually wrong because it depletes you of energy. Painting gives me so much energy that then afterwards I just don't mind doing other stuff as much and thereby do it much more efficiently. Now, there's a lot of goal setting in this course, a lot of visualizing, and it's important, right? Be mindful whether that makes you too exhausted, though. Always these goals. You have to go get and do this and do that, and I have to achieve. Whew, it makes me nervous. But I do set goals all the time. Even the miniature goals for, today I want to get this done is a kind of a goal. What I missed out on was giving myself rewards. How silly is that? I got that out of one of her videos. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Where am I giving myself the rewards? I always thought my reward would be the painting. After I do all the other stuff that I don't want to do, then my reward is the painting. And that never worked for me. So the painting itself is not your reward. No. The painting itself is your job and is what you're here for in the world. And then that other stuff is part of that job. That's less fun. And then on top of that, you get rewards. I think that's important. I don't do that enough for myself. I really don't. This is one of the not so favorite paintings that I did. And this is my probably favorite one out of the 6 big paintings for part 3. I had a pencil sketch. And value masses, so where the darks and lights are. And I think that made this painting so much better than it would have been if I had not done that. And again, this kind of was the source then for what's coming up. I think I already said that. Don't feel too fixated on one certain way to paint your paintings. Let yourself be free and say, I like that aspect of this ink, and bring it in. Then you might end up with one painting that's not your favorite. I never thought this would happen. I thought, 25 paintings for a portfolio. My God, that's a lot of painting. I already got 16. I'm sure I'm going to be able to leave out the 2 paintings. I don't have to include them in my portfolio because I have plenty others. So then came production week. Now you don't have to do production week in the 4th week. That's just where they talk about it and give it to you as a tool for inspiration. You get to use different, it doesn't have to be canvas, it can be paper, it can be anything else. I used this canvas board that I had. You can do 8 or 10. What I do recommend, especially if you have doubts about your cohesiveness, and not only actually for production week, but in general, is to always work on 2 or 3 paintings as a triptych or diptych. I hope I'm saying that right. I think those are the weirdest words. A series of 3, a series of 2. These 3 are my absolute favorite pieces. I just love them. Followed probably by these 3 and then these 2. These, not so much my favorites. I would not recommend painting fast. Just because it's production week and you have to finish 10 paintings. Being energetic and spontaneous is great. Rushing things is not great. I felt myself going quite slow. There is going to be a time lapse on my channels of that whole week doing these 10 paintings. I did actually not paint that much that week because I had a lot of other stuff going on. Somehow easily finished 10 paintings and had a great time. And didn't feel like I was rushing. They are simpler subject matters, right? It's just one figure. It's not a figure within whatever surrounding. Smaller, though smaller doesn't mean it's that much quicker because you just have smaller brushes too. Saying that, I think these are great sources for me to go from into the next big paintings. Rushing things is not the same as being spontaneous. I would also say finding shortcuts. Yes, you can find shortcuts. Might be beneficial for production week, but be mindful which shortcuts make your paintings lose depth. There are many, many layers of paint and each layer shines through. And if I were to just leave out a whole layer, I would lose a lot of that depth that I really like in my paintings. So be mindful about which one is a good shortcut and which one just makes your painting not look as rich anymore. I'm chuckling the whole time when I'm painting these. My relatives have now come up with the expression fear eyes. And I can relate to that. I think it's funny. Yeah, there are the fear eyes in my paintings, very recurring all the time. Now, they're not my personal fear eyes. I'm sure I'm going to be talking more about it. I think I paint about my experience of life and just what I observe. In my opinion, human beings are extremely helpless creatures to a point of pathetic sometimes. I find human beings very ill-equipped for this thing called life. We're such clumsy beings. So all of this is painted with a bit of a sense of humor. You get to chuckle about this stuff. Now, my relatives see the fear eyes. You might see them too, and I see them. But as I said, they're not my fear eyes. This doesn't show you, oh my God, Katja must be a really disturbed person. She must be very unhappy. No, actually, not really. So what I want to say is that your relatives might not be the best ones to give you an idea of the effect your paintings make, because your relatives might be worried more than you about how likable your art is and what other people are going to think, what other people are going to think about them because of the stuff you paint. Just be mindful The effect your art has on people that don't know you at all is different than the effect it has on people who do know you. So I think I've talked plenty about making sources and how it's not a problem for me anymore. What I do want to say is, for some people it's very important to have sources so they know what to paint, so they don't elaborate over the white canvas too long. That is never a problem for me. Give me a white canvas and I'll unwhite it for you. For me, important is actually that unwhitening of the canvas, meaning having prepared canvases. I find nothing more frustrating than having to prep, prime, or make a canvas before I get to paint. So that's for me almost the same as always having 20 sources ready to go. I need to have canvases of different sizes ready to go that I can just grab and start painting. Last but not least, last time I gave you an art quote that I really like. I have another one. Sorry if I've already shared it. I don't think I did. I shared it in my newsletter, but I don't think I shared it on this channel. A painter paints what he sells. An artist sells what he paints. I want to be an artist. I don't want to be a painter. So you might have noticed that suddenly I'm not that worried about how likable or sellable my art is anymore. It's just not that important anymore. It used to be so important, and I got really triggered all the time by stuff Milan says in the videos, and where I'm like, yeah, I know my stuff isn't sellable, it's not joyful enough, it's not... I'm not worried about it anymore. I don't want to be in other people's minds and trying to figure out what they might want to hang up on their walls, because that makes me a painter. Then I would paint what I know I can sell. An artist sells what he paints. I'm just gonna keep painting, and if I start selling this stuff, that's wonderful. But I'm not gonna change my style and my process. It's a process. I need to keep going this path, and I bet in 2 months my paintings will look different. Maybe they're gonna be more sellable, who knows? Maybe they're gonna be less sellable, could also be. What is sellable even? Look at what's out there in the galleries. I live by that quote. And I do want to be an artist and not a painter. And I hope the same is true for you. I want you to be an artist. I want you to be you. I've said that many times. It's so worth it. Oh my goodness, this course is so worth it. I think again, I've said some things where I don't agree with them, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that I don't like the program. I think it's amazing. Never thought I'd be where I am now. And I'm curious to find out where I am in a month when I talk to you again. So, you take care. You do a lot of awesome stuff. Enjoy life. It's precious and it's short. So, have a good time with it. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe to my channel, but you can also subscribe to my newsletter on my homepage. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram. Soon I will sell originals, but I'm also selling prints, and I'm selling some of my art on products. And you will receive a coupon if you subscribe to my newsletter. So why don't you do that? Everything is linked, and I really hope to see you again. So take care.